Somebody hold me too close. Somebody hurt me too deep. Somebody sit in my chair and ruin my sleep and make me aware of being alive, being alive.
And we're live.
Hello and welcome to our best of 2019 episode of the First Time Watchers podcast.
Because we like to watch.
My name is Tim Costa.
This is Walter Vinci.
And those crickets you hear are Hermano da Silva, who may or may not join us during this episode. Who knows? But someone who is joining us tonight, the evil doppelganger with a very recognizable voice, the man who likes to eat the rich while painting them in one continuous shot. From the 25th frame, our semi-regular contributor, Mark Herney. Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my favorite show of the year.
Yay!
Excellent. I would say it's probably my favorite show of the year as well. Mark, what's the latest with the website since the last time we spoke with you?
Well, the website, the 25th frame, is no longer. It's currently been shut down. Criterion Now and Criterion Close-Up are on a hiatus, but moving back to Criterion Cast, as I understand, and will probably start to happen again, a little less frequently. So my co-host in crime, Aaron West, has actually been sick, so the kind of the timing of it has worked out, flu and all that. So coming back at some point, but it's a pleasure to talk to you guys about it giving me a little more time to watch some 2019 movies. So there we are.
Well, speaking of 2019, anything about the year in film that sticks out to you?
It feels like, I say this every year, it does feel like it's another great year. I did have some trouble really narrowing down my list. I do feel like I have maybe only one perfect film on my list and one potentially close to perfect film. One of the themes I kind of drew out from the year, just thinking about it last night, was a mix of I want what I want with, I'm actually not going to give some titles because I'm afraid it'll spoil the list, but I want what I want and F you if you get in my way. So maybe I'll mention those later, but
Interesting.
Kind of tied into that. There's a lot of films about class and the differences of class, some about race and the plight of women. I guess maybe we hit that every year, but a lot of enjoyable films. So, yeah.
Wally, what about you? Anything about 2019 films that stick out to you?
2019 did not hit as hard for me movie-wise as I kind of hoped it would. Some years feel like there's like a bumper crop of just like, this is awesome. It feels like the really great ones, or the things that I thought were great, were few and far between. I see a lot on Twitter of people talking up other movies that I was like, I didn't really think it was all that great. And we'll get into that when we, talk about our honorable mentions and whatnot. But I think overall it was a year for movies because the good stuff is really good. But there wasn't a lot of great movies. You know what I mean?
I do.
That makes sense?
I do, because, look, last year, the year prior, I should say, I set a record for myself in 2018 for watching 151 films from that year. And after that, I said, I don't need to do that anymore. I pushed myself, and I said to myself, I could get just as much satisfaction from films in 2019 if I cut it in half, let's say. So while I didn't set any kind of goal or mark for myself, I was like, if I watch 75 to 85 movies, I'll be fine. But I still found myself watching 104 movies from last year.
Wow.
So I really guess I just couldn't help myself. But I always feel bad because there are films that seem like they're in the middle ground that would appeal to me and might strike a chord more with me than it did with most others. So I would feel bad for missing out on those and not giving them a chance. And, for one film in particular that didn't quite make my top 10, was hanging in there for a while until the very end. I'm glad I caught up with that because it was hit and miss for a lot of other people. But for me, it really struck a good chord, a real strong chord. But, other than that, I think this year, while it was relatively strong, as most years are, I think it wasn't as good as the previous year. I think 2019 was far more top-heavy in films. So with a lot more in the middle, just kind of, if you want to say 3.5 star movies right in the middle there, which aren't a complete waste of time, but, could have done without them. Didn't necessarily need them. But so with that said, Mark, what about scenes and performances of the year that really stuck out to you?
I mean, as far as scenes, I probably have too many on my list, but there was, I'll just run down a few. I feel like there was the last shot from Knives Out, or maybe I'll just mention a few kind of opening scenes, closing scenes. The last shot from Anaria is one. I may bring that one up again. That's a lesser seen Swedish movie about a spaceship that is really transporting people from Earth to Mars, and something happens. It was recommended by Scott and I from Criterion Cast and Battleship Pretension. So I really recommend that one. The opening scene to Uncut Gems, the Us opening, really liked. The High Life end and the title card I thought were really great. I love the opening to The Lighthouse. The Last Black Man in San Francisco was one of the best openings of the year, I think. And the final shot to Clemency has a bit of symmetry, I think, to the final shot in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is great. And some punctuation in Portrait of a Lady on Fire that I really enjoyed. You Can't Beat the Argument scene and the serving paper scenes in Marriage Story I thought were great. The little lesser-known film in Fabric, which came out from Peter Strickland this year. I don't know if people saw. I'll just say the mannequin sex and voyeurism scene is one not to miss, I guess. Oh. Moonchase scene in Ad Astra. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the Spawn Ranch scene, and the ending again. The last whacking in Irishman, 1917's flares, and the airplane sequence. Parasite Under the Table, as I'll call it, I guess. And the flood and the cellar kick. So yeah, some really good scenes. I had quite a few to put on my list there.
What about you, Wally? Any scenes there?
A couple that I wouldn't say scenes, but I'd say overall performances.
Okay.
I don't have because it didn't make my list. The child actor who is in Brightburn. Because I think he played the difference between a scared as shit kid and also a terrifying monster. I think he was able to do that pretty well on both sides of the equation.
Yeah.
Billy Lord, who is the only reason to watch Booksmart, in my opinion.
Oh.
She's amazing. She's amazing, and every scene that she comes in, I wanted more of her character. The longer the movie went, I wanted her to just reappear again. I'm also going to give it to, of course, Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson for their performances in Marriage Story, specifically the scene that made the rounds. I saw it on Facebook where there's a split screen. Was that?
I was just going to say, you can't get away from it on Twitter.
Yeah, well, there's a split scene. Somebody put together this little video where you see the script, working through. So you're reading the script and you're hearing and watching the actors perform the lines. So they certainly deserve it. The closing scene the fight scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I think is worth it just for sheer shock factor alone.
Right.
And the other ones, obviously the other performances, they all factor into my top five, which I don't want to give away just yet, because I feel that my top five also features some incredibly good performances by the people involved in them.
Fair enough. I have a number of scenes that really stuck out to me. There's only three, which I won't point out, but there are only three scenes from movies that made my top five. But I really loved the unbroken moon landing sequence on Apollo 11. There's a character dressed in white in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which is striking. It's striking. Awkwafina on the floor talking about her memories in The Farewell. Lupita Nyong'o descending an escalator in Us. The whole last act of Parasite. There's a confession scene in The Mustang. Elizabeth Moss sings to her child in Her Smell, which is a very beautiful scene. The whole sex scene in Midsommar is both horrifying and hilarious. Antonio Banderas reconciling with his older mother in Pain and Glory. The opening action scene in Six Underground, thank you, Michael Bay. Cap using Thor's hammer in Avengers Endgame. You guys remember Alita Battle Angel? That came out last year. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Alita's one-handed punch to a face was awesome. The final 60 minutes of Dragged Across Concrete. Rebecca Ferguson evading a young girl's mind in Dr. Sleep, which is wonderfully executed by Mike Flanagan, who does have a knack for great visuals. There's a moment of silence in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood that also breaks the fourth wall. Firing a machine gun at Jupiter in The Wandering Earth. Thank you very much. The final 10 minutes of How to Train Your Dragon 3. Tears. And I really did love Kristoff's solo song in Frozen 2. I thought that was a great nod to 80s hair metal ballads. Really great. Mark, any performances that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a few. I would say for this supporting actress, Florence Pugh for Little Women, for sure. And the actress who I'm not going to try to pronounce her name, who plays Nai, Nene, I believe it is, in The Farewell, is fantastic. I think those would be my two top. I did like Julia Fox in Uncut Gems and Scarlett Johansson from Jojo Rabbit. In Best Supporting Actor, Chris Cooper in Little Women and Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, probably my top. I did also like Timothée Chalamet in Little Women. Again, I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, but the character who plays Billy in The Nightingale, and Jonathan Majors as Monty in Last Black Man in San Francisco, supporting favorites. Best Actress, I would say both actresses from Portrait of a Lady on Fire, who play Marianne and Eloise. Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson, Her Smell, Elizabeth Moss. Those are probably my top. I also really like Julianne Moore and Gloria Bell. Taylor Russell is Emily in Waves. I think that one was a little bit underseen. And Alfre Woodard is in Clemency, made the festival circuit. It's really just kind of going wide now. She's great. Pretty much the only reason to see that movie. And Tao Zhao, I believe it is, in Ashes Purest White is great. And lastly, Best Actor. My award would be between Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems and Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse, I think. Adam Driver, also very strong. I mean, what a year he had with The Dead Don't Die, The Rise of Skywalker. He's also in The Report and The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. I mean, Adam Driver, it's his year. Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time. Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day. And I'll give a nod to Matthew McConaughey for Beach Bum. I think that's it. Yep, those are my performances.
Yo, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Hermano. Nice to have you on board, Hermano.
Thanks. Nice to be back. I mean, technical difficulties. My computer hasn't been touched in like over a month. Just been relaxing, not thinking about podcasting, and come back to a shit show.
Oh, hey.
Hey, there's a double meaning in that.
Nice, very nice.
Thank you.
As far as performances for me, I'll just run through. Lupita Nyong'o in Us is probably my performance of the year.
Forgot that one.
Well, once again, Elizabeth Moss and Her Smell. I will say my dear mortal enemy, J.D. Duran, would not shut up about Sienna Miller in American Woman, and I have to give him credit because he was right. She is great in that movie. Sadly passed over during award season because it's a brilliant performance. Florence Pugh in Midsommar. Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse, guys. Come on. Talk about an Oscar snub right there. Saoirse Ronan in Little Women. Mark, you mentioned The Nightingale and Portrait of a Lady on Fire. They're both dual performances in those. Al Pacino in The Irishman. Mads Mikkelsen in Arctic, which is a movie that came out early in the year, and he was great. Antonio Banderas, of course, in Pain and Glory. You mentioned Julianne Moore and Gloria Bell. Awkwafina and Shuzhen Zhao, both in The Farewell. Javier Bardem and Penelope Cruz in Everybody Knows, which is an Asghar Farhadi film, which is on Netflix and everybody should watch. Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, of course. Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes in Dolomite Is My Name. Hell yeah. Samara Weaving in Ready or Not. You remember that, Wally, right?
I do.
Yeah, she was great in that. Tom Hanks, of course, in Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Brad Pitt in Ad Astra. Bill Hader in It Chapter 2. And I cannot leave this without saying Nick Nolte in Angel Has Fallen. Absolutely. Wally, is there any performances you want to mention?
A couple that are worth mentioning that because they're not in my top 5 is George McKay from 1917 playing the young soldier that he's got to get through the enemy lines. I'm doing this next one not because it's a great performance, but because I found it highly entertaining. Would be Daniel Craig and Chris Evans in Knives Out, because I really loved the character that Daniel Craig was attempting to play, and the way he was delivering the lines about the donut, and just how he, the level of life he brought to that character. I'm also going to mention, of course, Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker, because he elevates what's a mediocre movie at best with his performance in that. And I believe that is all the ones I'm going to mention now, because when I get to my top 5, it'll be pretty apparent as to and I'm also going to bring up Samara Weaving as well from Ready or Not, because she's great in that movie as well. But the rest ones I'm just going to leave because I feel that their performances dictate also why they're in my top 5 as well.
Also, we have to mention movies that we missed before we get into our top 5, so that people don't yell at us and say, hey, why didn't you mention this? You know what? There's only a handful of movies that I missed that I feel bad about. I guess top of the list is Jojo Rabbit. And it has been playing constantly around me. I just haven't had the time and or the money to be able to carve out to go see it, sadly. Honey Boy, which unfortunately comes to Prime this coming weekend, and I think we're going to be discussing on the podcast in a couple of weeks, but I wasn't able to see that beforehand. In Fabric, I wasn't able to see. And Waves, the Trey Edward Schultz movie. Ford versus Ferrari, Queen and Slim, Richard Jewell, Dark Waters, A Hidden Life, the Terrence Malick film, or The Two Popes. So a handful of movies that I kind of feel bad, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch up with. What about you, Mark?
Most of those, except for I think Jojo Rabbit, I didn't see, or I did see, and in Fabric. But the big ones I didn't catch up with that I was really we're next on the list, so to speak, to watch. Pain and Glory, The Long Day's Journey into Night. I wanted to see that in 3D. A Hidden Life from Terrence Malick, missed that one. The Souvenir from earlier this year. Nonfiction from Assayas, and 2 documentaries, Hail Satan, One Child Nation. I did want to see Hotel by the River, the Hong Sang-soo movie. Peter Liu, not many people are talking about, from Mike Lee, wanted to see. Diane, Wild Rose, La Flor, the 14-hour, I believe it's Argentinian film.
Holy shit. Come on,
when are you
Mark.
going to have the time for that? That's right up Tim's alley right there, 14 hours. Rolling Thunder review, Dragged Across Concrete, the Zoller movie, long movie, just didn't get to it. Dark Waters, Where'd You Go, Bernadette? I love Linklater, even though it's not supposed to be one of his best. Art of Self-Defense, An Elephant Sitting Still, also 4 hours. Black Mother, 77 minutes. Monos, I need to rewatch because I missed the beginning. Synonyms, and I did miss Honey Boy also.
Hermano, are you abstaining from this discussion?
I am abstaining.
Oh my God. Okay. What about you, Wally?
Oh, I've got a litany of stuff that I wanted to see that I missed. Just to name a few off the top of my head. Dragged Across Concrete. We're having a problem with that title today, aren't we? Honey Boy, Peanut Butter Falcon, Us, Midsummer, Ford versus Ferrari, Jojo Rabbit, to name a few of the ones that I heard a lot about that I wanted to check out, but just got away from me. Other things, jumped in front, and I just wasn't able to get to any of those.
Yeah, without that out of the way, Mark, let's get into your number 5.
All right. Here we go. My number 5. I'd like to make it's a tiny cheat, but not really. My number 5 is I'm pairing with another film that I think was one of the most exhilarating yet anxiety-inducing experiences that I had in the theater. You could probably guess it's Uncut Gems from the Safdie brothers. And I'm pairing it with Her Smell, which is down on my list a little bit farther. I think it's down to number 13, which I really enjoyed too with Elizabeth Moss. But Uncut Gems, I mean, it's about, to me, a man making his way, but not making his way. I really enjoyed those tight close-ups throughout the film that you just can't escape from. And I didn't want to escape either. I mean, this guy, he's not a likable character. Performance by Adam Sandler that I nominated as one of the best. I mean, he should have gotten an. I mean, how do Willem Dafoe and Adam Sandler not get nominations this year? It's
Good question.
It's it shows you where the cat at. So he can't. This character can't get out of his past and out of his own way. And even though you hate the character, you also love him. I mean, I did love him. And I could actually identify a little bit in him in some small way with just being a father. I mean, there's some scenes of him being a father, but in him just trying to keep up as a father and his business and all the mistakes that he makes. And everyone kind of coming at him, and he just needed to shut himself in his office sometimes. I feel the same way sometimes as a father. So I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit, and I think there's a lot of folks that would just find this a nightmare, just anxiety inducing, and why would I want to watch this? But I had a blast. I loved the opening scene. I won't give it away, but it's takes place inside a body part. It's lovely. Uncut Gems, my number 5.
What's the logic of pairing this with Her Smell again?
Just these characters that you don't want to be with, you don't want to be around, that and the film that is, I mean, especially the first half to 3/4 of Her Smell just is anxiety inducing. So yes. I think those two together, would if you're to watch those back to back, you wouldn't be able to sleep that night. I think.
Her Smell was a movie that kind of raised in esteem as the year went on. I ranked it a little bit higher as it went on. Her Smell is my number 33 of the year, but Uncut Gems is my number 20 of the year. I would still, I'm not sure I would recommend them to everybody though.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not one that you would. I mean, I'd recommend it to the four guys on this podcast, to just about any cinephile, but anyone outside of that, I don't know if you can recommend it.
Yeah. Wally, your number 5.
My number 5. I was going through the list to see, what had come out that I had seen, and this one came up. I was like, I forgot this came out this year, and I really enjoyed it. My number 5 is The Perfection. When troubled musical prodigy Charlotte seeks out Elizabeth, the new star pupil of her former school, and encounter sends both musicians down a sinister path with shocking consequences. I loved this movie when it came out, and I think it's a really cool twist on horror, which is it's surprising to see it in my top 5, because I kind of don't weigh horror movies as heavily or as well as I would say like a drama. But in this instance, I think it brings enough unique things to the table in terms of plot twists and turns and everything that's going on to make it a satisfying watch.
The Perfection is my number 46 of the year, and it is memorable. There are definitely some memorable scenes in there. Good pick. I love that pick. Hermano, your number 5.
My number 5 is my second favorite horror film of the year, Marriage Story. For obvious reasons, I put it in the horror genre. Completely horrific what transpires in Marriage Story. But I did enjoy it as much as you can enjoy a film about watching two people sort of self-destruct and sort of start off passively aggressively, just going through the motions of a divorce, and then once lawyers get involved, it starts getting really ugly.
I was falling short. Life with you was joyless.
What, so then you had to go and fuck someone else?
You shouldn't be upset that I fucked her. You should be upset that I had a laugh with her.
Do you love her?
No, but she didn't hate me. You hated me.
You hated me. You fucked somebody we worked with.
You stopped having sex with me in the last year. I never cheated on you.
That was cheating on me.
But there's so much I could have done. I was a director in my 20s who came from nothing and was suddenly on the cover of fucking Time Out New York. I was hot shit and I wanted to fuck everybody and I didn't. And I loved you and I didn't want to lose you. But I'm in my 20s And I didn't want to lose that too, and I kind of did. And you wanted so much, so fast. I didn't even want to get married. Fuck it! There's so much I didn't do.
Oh, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
I can't believe I have to know you forever!
Oh, you're fucking insane. And you're fucking winning!
Are you kidding me? I wanted to be married. I'd already lost. You didn't love me as much as I loved you.
What does that have to do with L.A.? What?
You're so merged with your own selfishness, you don't even identify it as selfishness anymore. You're such a dick!
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead. Dead like if I can guarantee Henry would be okay. I'd hope you get an illness and then get hit by a car and die.
And then ultimately on the third act, I think it sort of comes back around in maybe the most natural and plausible way it could have. And I think I really appreciated the performances, the kind of, it felt mostly realistic. These people working out their issues where before it seemed like they were kind of hesitant to do so, to really talk about why they were separating. And then second act is essentially just them, just yelling at each other and, dealing with the idea that, they have a child involved and just kind of how that's going to work. And just seeing them both sort of trying to figure it out and manage the chaos. I thought it was really well done. So yeah, that's why it's my number 5.
Did you feel like you needed to come down on a side?
No, I honestly thought it played it fairly for both sides. You could make the argument for both sides as to why they were right. I really didn't come down on one or the other. I thought they both had valid points. I thought they were obviously two people that, they shared something at one point and then, it just started to unravel in a sense. So, I think it was for the best.
I will say that movie has garnered a lot of fascinating conversations. I've had a great deal of interesting conversations where directions I never would have expected it to go regarding that movie. And this movie actually made my top 10. It's my number 8 movie of the year. It's a really great film. It's his. I think it's his best film. It's fascinating.
Agreed. It's my number 6.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. My number 5 is a movie by Jennifer Kent, and that is The Nightingale. Unrelentingly brutal. I mean, she really directs the hell out of this movie. That's just really bleak and all about vengeance and anger and how you process that and at what cost. Not just a movie of this woman seeking personal justice for what these monsters did to her family, but I think it serves as like a tale of reclamation. And honestly, we talk about themes of the year. I think reclamation comes up a lot, and also reckoning with one's past, not just the characters in the movies, but also I think directors or filmmakers reckoning with their own personal history in their filmography. But reclamation is certainly a key in this movie when it comes to her soul, as well as the lives and lands lost to the white man in this movie, within the context of this movie and in actual history. I think Jennifer Kent does a great job by honoring the people by displaying the horrors that they endured in its brutal honesty. And it's a very hard film to watch. And she has a masterful touch on the tone and pace guiding us on this journey, and I think the use of the 1371 format it really brings us into the headspace of these two characters, and I think Franciosi and Ganambar put on 2 of the best performances of the year as well, and I think they really have great chemistry and play off each other's emotions in heartbreaking ways. And once again, another movie I cannot recommend to everybody, but if you can stomach unflinching real life terror and wrenching heartache, so right up your alley, Mark. It's
my number 8,
one of the best films of the year. So yeah, Nightingale, my number 5. Mark, your number 4.
Number 4 is this film. I think it actually may have been a little bit lower on an initial watch, and maybe it was comparing with another film that was my number one 2 years ago. But it is the film that is going to. I mean, we wanted the Best Cinematography Award for Deakins for so long, and he finally won it with Blade Runner 2049, and he's going to win it again in 2019 for 1917.
Mm-hmm.
My number 4 movie. It's a grand technical achievement. Everyone knows that. Wonderful sets, but there is also emotion there. And the first time I saw this movie, I was gobsmacked by the achievement. I mean, at the very beginning, you are going into, it's a descent into hell, a true descent into hell at the beginning. And it's what I imagined the No Man's Land look like, and I've never seen it just quite so visceral as it is when these two people set out. It's a, folks I think know the movie. It's set up like it's a one take film. It's not technically a one take film, but it looks like it is in many ways, about these two guys who have to notify the British forces closer to the German enemy lines that they're walking into a trap. And to me, I'm glad, Tim, that you got this film right. I think when you guys talked about it, because there is true stakes of this movie. I think there really is. Throughout the movie, you're waiting for death to happen. It's very tense. But when death does come, it's initially it's off screen. The killing blows off screen. We just hear the scream and then a slow death. And I think it's that whole scene. A lot of the longer scenes, like the airplane scene, is wonderful, and of course the one that I mentioned with the flares is wonderful. But every set piece, every moment, I really enjoyed, and I think this one really impacted my kids. It's one of the only ones I got to see twice this year, and I think they really appreciated it. It's even more emotional and impactful, I think, the second time somehow. I don't know, even though you know the journey, you're in this. The tension of this shared land, is someone friend or foe, is really amazing. So it's a grand achievement to me. 1917, my number 4.
I agree. This is my number 11 film of the year, just outside of my top 10. So yeah, great. Wally, your number 4.
Number 4 for me is a movie that I had no idea what to expect going in. You would call me up and say, "Hey, you want to go check this out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I loved it. And directed by Tom Harper, Wild Rose. A troubled young how the fuck do you pronounce Glaswegian?
She's from
woman
Glasgow.
Dreams to become a Nashville country star. I think this movie has got a shit ton of heart in it.
Susanna's needing me in next week.
Well, she can't have you. Kids are on holiday. You'd do without you for a week.
I know it, but
you said you'd take them away.
Well, it's no cleaning. I'd be doing it's rehearsing. What is, I'm doing this gig at her house, and she's invited all these people, and I'm going to perform with my band. And then they're going to invest.
Invest? Invest in what?
In me. In my career. In getting to Nashville.
Oh. You don't remember her investing in Mary when she was in agony with her hip? 18-month waiting list. If she'd money to spare, she could have forked out in that.
She's not forking it out. Just give me a chance to earn it. But it's got to be good, no pub band quality, and we haven't any long to put it together. And I phoned the school to see about Holiday Club, but it's all full up. And even if it wasn't, I'd rather they were with you, because I don't want them thinking that I've just...
Thinking what? You cast them off when you get a better offer? Or that all this is for nothing because you've still got one foot out the door? How can we help you? Haven't you booked the time off?
You've been out 20 years. Special circumstances.
I've used have enough.
Aye, when I was fucking up.
That's 4 years no go by you.
This is me trying to make something of myself, and surely to God that's a good thing for them.
A good thing for them? No letting them down again and again and again. That would be a good thing for them. And I thought you'd turn the corner. More fool me.
Especially out of Jessie Buckley, like her character, you can feel just how much of drive she has, that she really wants to make this happen for herself, and just her overall character arc throughout this movie as she changes and kind of realizes what's most important to her as she progresses along. And I like that this movie has a much more realistic ending than other movies that would be trying to be this way.
Mhm.
And I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I feel that this has got a much more realistic ending than other movies of its genre.
Mhm.
I think the performances, especially Jesse Buckley, are great. I think the setting is interesting. There is a musical bit that is really soulful about 3/4 of the way through the movie, which is sung a cappella with just a violin providing a little bit of background to it. I think this I was blown away when I saw this. Like I really enjoyed it. So it is going to sit in my number 4 spot.
It's an interesting pick, and also talk about snubs. I don't believe Glasgow was nominated for an Oscar, was it?
Nope.
The song, yeah, that's a shame. It's a shame. This is a movie that sits at my number 43. For me, I don't think I could get past some of the tropes that it falls into, for the genre. But I totally understand. The performances absolutely elevate. Jessie Buckley is great. But there's no way I could spot it over The Wandering Earth, which is my number 42 of the year. Hervado, your number 4.
All right, my number 4. I'm just going to read the synopsis because this synopsis is wild. The last female bee hunter in Europe must save the bees and return the natural balance when a family of nomadic beekeepers invade her land and threaten her livelihood. Do you guys have any idea what that is?
I do.
Yep.
I do not.
Honeyland. Documentary, Walter. That synopsis is way off. Like, phenomenally off. Makes it sound like some sort of post-apocalyptic Save the Bees movie. It is not.
That's what I thought it was. I was like, I haven't seen a thing for this.
It is absolutely not. This was the most recent addition to my top 5. I just watched it last week, on Hulu. If people want to check it out. It's a documentary basically about this woman in Macedonia, I believe. Could be wrong on the location, but she's kind of living alone, taking care of her mother in this abandoned village. These people just show up one day and decide they're gonna live amongst her, and she basically teaches them how to raise bees, and kind of goes from there. But I mean, the film is probably the most raw film I saw all year. Like, I was absolutely captivated by this film. Maybe the most raw moment of any film I saw all year as well. Towards the end, I couldn't believe they actually were filming during this scene, because it seemed like such a personal moment that I almost felt like I wanted to leave the room because I shouldn't have been there, And it's about so much more than just the bees. It obviously evokes just kind of a lot of negativity around capitalism, encroaching on indigenous land of sorts, greed obviously runs rampant through this, and then ultimately just leaving wreckage in the wake of all those things I mentioned previously. So, but ultimately ends on a high note, I think, as much as it can. So I loved Honeyland. I really urge people to check it out. It's my number 4.
Mark, you had a chance to see this?
I did, yeah, just a little while ago. I feel kind of bad because I don't have any documentaries, I think, in my top 20. And if there was one to make it, I think this one would be there along with For Sama. They're just barely on the outside looking in the top 20. It's a great one.
Look, you mentioned For Sama, and also I've heard other people mention Honeyland. Those are 2 documentaries that I avoided this year because I think there was subject matter, especially in For Sama, that I just would not be able to take. It would be too heartbreaking for me. Is there?
Well, of course I watched it then.
Of course,
no, it's tough.
Of course,
it is.
Yeah, I didn't watch Honeyland because I don't think. Yeah, from what I heard, am I wrong, Hermano, that there are moments in there that might get to me?
There's one moment specifically, I think it might get to you. But I don't know. It's really just that one moment,
Okay.
and it's just a beautiful film, like it's got like a strength to it, especially the main lead, if you can even call her really that. She is a character, man. And I've never, it's like one of these characters that'll stick around with you. Like she exudes such strength, and I can't even imagine her life. You know what I mean? You just get a small portion of her life and what she's about, and it's just powerful. You know, it's like one of those documentaries that works on pretty much every level. But yes, there is one scene that might get to you.
Well, my number 4 is a film that I think most people are rooting for to win Best Picture, and it's pretty much a lock to win Best Foreign Language Film, and that is Parasite. It's another 2019 Eat the Rich film that I think works on every level, and level being another key word there, because there's a lot of levels, literally and figuratively, in this movie. It's visualized with the class systems by represented by stairs. It's subtle but essential to the themes and understanding how these people talk to each other and think about the other classes. The fact that the story unfolds in a way that reveals more and more bonkers situations is a wonderful surprise. I was so glad I went into this film as blind as possible, and I'm not even going to begin to try to explain anything in here, because if you haven't seen it, it's one of those films that you just need to see to believe.
여보, 이 전송 버튼이 완전히 무슨 미사일 버튼이네.
뭔 얘기야, 여보?
아니, 이 버튼만 누른다 그러면 전향반도 꼼짝을 못하잖아. 이게 완전 북한 미사일이야. 북핵 미사일 버튼.
경의하는 최고領導자 김정은 동지께서는 오늘 이번 일가족 사기단의 동영상을 보시면서 그들의 악랄하고 저급한 도발에 대해서 경악과 분노를 금치 못하시었다.
이거 진짜 오랜만이다, 여보.
이에 위대한 수령께서는 작금의 한반도 비핵화의 과정 속에서 마지막 남은 단 한 발의 핵탄두를 저들 미치광 일가족의 간악한 아가리에 처박을 하는 궁극의 지령을 내리셨다.
역시 종북 개그의 지존 사랑해요.
저들의 구린내 나는 오장육부를 최후의 핵 폐기장으로 삼아 마침내 비핵화와 세계 평화를 이룩하시려는 위대한 영도자 김정은 동지. 똑바로 안 들어 이것들아.
Direction, editing, cinematography, everything's on point. There's so many colors that pop in wonderful ways. It's one of the best looking films of the year. There's so many layers. I was lucky enough to have to see this twice, and the second time I saw it, I was really able to see a lot of the layers to the story structure and the production design. There's a lot of stuff that's unlocked, with those clues, and there's a quote in there by the father where he's talking to his son, and he says, "Ki-woo, you know what kind of plan never fails? No plan at all. You know why? If you make a plan, life never works out that way." And it's really something that stuck with me, because there's so many times in my life where I've thought it's so true. You think of a situation, you try to plan out something, an event, an interaction, and it never goes the way you ever anticipate. And it's amazing how well this film visualizes that to a T, right to the very end. It's amazing. It deserves all the accolades. My number 4, Parasite.
Had to find my way, make my own mistakes, but you know that I had to go. Ain't no yellow brick road running through Glasgow, but I found one that's stronger than stone. Ain't no place like home. Ain't no place like home. Moon hanging low over my window, shoebox of dreams hid under my bed. Follow the bright light, city of gold.
You guys ready to kick off a new season for our show?
I'm ready.
Me too. What about you, Wally?
Walter?
Walter!
Look, I'll be with you in a few hours.
What are you doing?
I'm just listening to the In Session Film Podcast Best of the Decade episode.
Ha! It'll definitely be more than a few hours.
I bet. JD and Brendan sure like to talk.
Hermano, we better be quick with this.
Okay, each week the In Session Film Podcast chooses a movie to review.
Then creates a top 3 list based on what they just saw.
So if you have several hours to kill, you can check out their latest episode, which goes through the best films of the decade.
You can find their show on Apple Podcasts by searching for the In Session Film Podcast.
Or on the web at InSessionFilm.com.
So if you're not going anywhere for a while, check out the In Session Film Podcast on Apple Podcasts.
Or on the web at InSessionFilm.com.
Seriously, Wally, we have to start the show.
Busy!
I just click my heels 3 more times. There it all is. What's always been mine. Ain't no yellow brick road running through Glasgow, but I found one that's stronger than stone. Ain't no place like home. 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 Ain't no place like.
All right, Mark, you're number 3.
My number 3 was your number 4, Tim. It seems like the most consensus as far as critics go. I think it's Parasite from Bong Joon-ho. I really like this one. It's my favorite film from him since my other 2 favorites, and I think it has those sensibilities in his early film Memories of Murder, and I think from 2009 Mother. You could even see some parallels, I think, with this film and Us as well. I actually thought a little bit of the plot of Barry Lyndon, with the characters ingratiating themselves with others. Even the soundtrack, especially later, reminded me a bit of Barry Lyndon. It's a beautiful soundtrack if you get a chance to listen. But the scenes, the set pieces, the surprises, the sexiest scene of the year. I think the scene that involved the people under the table. I thought it was great.
You think that's
I
sexy?
love the opening.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was super sexy. I love the opening with the phones and the toilet. It's just great ensemble acting. I mean, it has all of his sensibilities and all those wide tonal shifts coalesce really well. I think really the only reason it wasn't my number 1, it didn't get even higher, was and again on first watch, and I'm with you, Tim. I really want to see it again. The birthday party scene didn't sit as well with me on first viewing. I'm not totally sure why. Just how bonkers things do get. So, but again, I look forward to watching this many, many times. And also just want to again plug, if you haven't seen Memories of Murder, if you love Parasite, it's a must watch. But that's my number 4, Parasite, or number 3, Parasite.
Wally, you're number 3.
My number 3 is a movie that's already been mentioned, and I like movies that stick with me. If you're a movie that you can, kind of be a splinter in my mind and make it think of you, on multiple occasions, and go, "Oh, that was an interesting, directorial move," and that was interesting, and just like overall, and the performances really get me. You've got a winner on your hands, and in this case, my number 3 movie is Uncut Gems. Charismatic New York City jeweler, always on the lookout for the next big score, makes a series of high-stake bets that could lead to the windfall of a lifetime.
You want to win by 1 point or fucking 30 points, KG? Right? I see you out there when the fucking stadium's all booing you. You're 30 up, you're still going full tilt. Let's see what has Vegas got you guys at tonight? Take a look. Let's see.
Are you serious? You gonna put us up right here?
Look at this shit. The Sixers are supposed to win the game tonight, they think.
I don't keep track of none of that shit.
They think on game 7 you're not gonna get fucking 18 points. They don't think you're gonna get 8 rebounds?
These guys don't know shit about
What the fuck are they doing? Doesn't that make you want to fucking kill them? Doesn't that make you want to say fuck you for doubting me? Doesn't that make you want to step on fucking Elton Brand's fucking neck? Come on, KG, this is no different than that. This is me, all right? I'm not a fucking athlete. This is my fucking way. This is how I win.
Adam Sandler. This is the Adam Sandler I like, by the way. I know that a lot of people give him a lot of shit for the goofy comedy shit that he does, which isn't all that great, in my opinion. But Adam Sandler acting is awesome. Like, he's a good actor when he wants to act. Not when he's like doing like the Abby Doobie Dabba Doo. No, I don't want that. I want this Adam Sandler. And I got it in bunches. His character is just so unlikable, but at the same time, he is basically a moving train wreck. You just can't stop watching what he's gonna do next. I love how the movie subverts expectations with his girlfriend, who they really frame her to be one thing, but she's actually the most honest person in the whole movie.
That's true. Yeah.
It's this movie. I think this movie is just it's one of those movies that's just. I think people either love it or hate it. I don't think there's anybody that's really in the middle on it. And I absolutely loved it. Kate and I actually quote this movie to each other, every now and again, usually in the form of "I'm not doing anything right. This isn't working." But this movie is I'd say Adam Sandler's best performance I've ever seen him in, and I think that even outweighs his performance in Punch Drunk Love and Rain on Me. So I think that this is like a top tier movie for him, and it's my number 3.
It's interesting you talk about the divisive reactions to this movie, and I found that a lot of people don't like being this anxious while watching a movie. Also, they don't like watching characters make the wrong decision every single time. So
no, I don't. Yeah. But to me, I'm far more into that whole like anxiety thing because I want, what the fuck is he gonna do now? No, don't do that. Oh no, no. And it's to me it's a particular form of escape to know that I don't have to worry about making these mistakes because he's making them for me. And I also know, I think someone at least one, everyone knows at least one person in their life that is basically that person that just doesn't make any great decisions. They just constantly choose the wrong path. In this case, he's always going for what's easy as opposed to what's actually going to work. But I think that the performance is just top notch for him.
Hermano, your number 3.
Well, my number 3 is the same as Wally's, Uncut Gems.
Wow.
Nice.
Everything Wally said, I loved Adam Sandler in this. For me, I feel like the film felt like watching someone with an addiction problem, just kind of self-destruct, the chasing of the high, if you will, like that whole the stone or whatever, the gem representing that, like his chasing of this big score essentially. And I just love that. Like I think some of the most tense I've felt since it reminded me a lot of Requiem for a Dream. Just watching people kind of go through the ups and downs and then ultimately, catastrophic towards the end. It was the closest I've come to feeling that sort of tension, was Uncut Gems compared to Requiem for a Dream. And I'm boycotting the Oscars this year for not giving KG a Best Supporting nod for playing himself. Boom.
Done right there. Fair enough. All right, my number 3. Let me just read the synopsis to you. I think this is what Hermano did previously. The synopsis: French dancers gather in a remote, empty school building to rehearse on a wintry night. The all-night celebration morphs into a hallucinatory nightmare when they learn their sangria is laced with LSD. Anybody know what this is?
Oh,
it's
Climax.
Climax.
Gaspar Noé's Climax is my number 3. So Noé's forte is obviously being a provocateur and displaying human experiences versus emotion, like instead of emotion. That's why a film of his called Love fails, where Climax succeeds. I think, as usual, he challenges his viewers from the very beginning of this movie. And even the structure of this movie seems to have 4 acts instead of the normal 3. So the opening of this movie, we're treated to 8 minutes of to-the-camera testimonial interviews by each actor that we'll see later. It's shown on an old television surrounded by VHS cases of classic horror films. One of those classic horror films, by the way, is 1981's Possession. Then there's an extended and fabulous dance sequence followed by conversations between all the couples that you've already been introduced to. The final act is by far the most memorable and fascinating. It's here that I think Noé is commenting directly on the madness and innate nature of humans, especially when these type of people try to coexist. And it's here where we see the clearest homage to Possession by Sofia Boutella, who's in this and does a wonderful job committing to the performance. There's an absolute trip to hell by the end of this movie. Exactly what you would expect from a Gaspar Noé film. Once again, not for everyone, but for me, the brashness of the filmmaking, the fascinating structure, I was compelled. I adore this movie, Climax. Mark, did you have a chance to see this?
Just recently, I picked up the Arrow release, and I really feel like I needed to sit a little bit longer before I decide. I mean, I love the structure of it, that it really we see we get the end credits at the end, and I'm with you. I think the beginning dance scene is amazing, and it feels like there's just multiple long takes that I kind of lose sight of, and maybe there are more, but it didn't really matter by the end. So yeah, it's kind of a return to form, I think, for him. Certainly better than Love, best since Enter the Void.
Yes, I would agree. Absolutely. Mark, your number 2.
Well, here we go. This is the film that I think you again was just catching up with some past First Time Watchers episodes, and you really did describe this in a great way, Tim. We're getting into the 2 films that I think are as close to perfect as I can say, and sometimes when I'm narrowing down a list, it's really it's the films, 1, that I'm probably going to buy at some point, 2, I want to rewatch the most, and 3, I just find so few flaws with, and I really just enjoy. This movie is like being wrapped up in a warm blanket. It's Greta Gerwig's Little Women.
Mm-hmm.
She is so honest with every one of her characters. She just shows their truth, and she's not afraid to do so, and really allows them to show their own truth. When you guys talked about this movie, you talked about how so much of it is showing and not telling about the characters, especially, and every character is given their due. So I was thinking of Lady Bird as well, whether, characters are likable or not, they are honest. Gerwig is honest with their characters. So, and what a cast for this film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it already mentioned some of the actors, but I mean, Saoirse Ronan and Florence Pugh really steal. But I think Chris Cooper is really unsung, and maybe my favorite performance in this movie. He is that warm blanket presence on the screen. And Laura Dern, I think, is fabulous as the mother. It's just a great ensemble cast. So Bob Odenkirk shows up as great.
Perhaps I was too quick in turning him down. Laurie.
Do you love him?
If he asked me again, I think I would say yes. Do you think he'll ask me again?
But do you love him?
I care more to be loved. I want to be loved.
That is not the same as loving.
I know. You know, I just feel I just feel like women, they have minds and they have souls as well as just hearts, and they've got ambition and they've got talent as well as just beauty. And I'm so sick of people saying that love is just all a woman is fit for. I'm so sick of it. But I'm so lonely.
I think the score will probably win the Oscar. It probably should. I mean, it's a score from Desplat that just moves along. The girls are always moving forward, and the score does also. And it's just a joyful score throughout. So I think it really did. I think most of the nominations were given to it that I thought should be by the Academy. I thought that they got most of those right. I thought maybe Dern might get a nod, but she didn't. But screenplay. The one glaring weakness is Greta Gerwig should have gotten for director. This is a wonderfully directed film. I did have trouble with the kind of flipping back and forth with the time shifts at first, but it didn't matter. It was all about these characters, and that's why I think rewatching this again will just make it that much richer. I think it was 2 hours, maybe. This movie flew by. I loved it. Little Women, my number 2.
Lady Bird is such a strong film to me that movie was the only reason I had any interest in watching Little Women, because Greta Gerwig impressed me that much, and has earned my viewership for life now. And you're right. I'm very glad I caught up with Little Women as well, and it's sitting in my number 18 of the year, right in between Pain and Glory and The Irishman. You're absolutely right. When I said I felt like I was being wrapped in a warm blanket. It's exactly what this movie is like, and it's wonderful. You did a great job of discussing it. Wally, you're number 2.
My number 2 is what I consider to be the thematic sequel to Snowpiercer. And we're talking about Parasite. All unemployed K-Tech and his family take a peculiar interest in the wealthy and glamorous parks. This movie really felt like a combination of, like, if somebody took the best parts of all, like, the great parts of Shoplifters, which I adored, and Snowpiercer, which I didn't necessarily initially like, knowing what the director is going for here, is what you get in Parasite. This family of limited means trying to get a better station in life, get more money, maybe make a better lives for themselves all the way around, and just how it all ultimately just it shows you how big the divide can be sometimes, and how sometimes insurmountable it can be in the end. And I thought the ending itself was smart to an extent, but also at the same time, it's one of those full circle endings, but I don't know how believable toward the end of it. But overall, this movie was it just blew me away when I saw it, and really it's I think it wholeheartedly deserves its number 2 spot.
Excellent. Hermano, you're number 2.
My number 2, I like to call Elevated Wicker Man. It's my favorite horror film of the year, Midsommar. So I loved it. I only saw something recently that took over the number 1 spot because it was my favorite film pretty much since I'd seen it. And yeah, I just loved it. I mean, Ari Aster is someone I think, much like Tim talks about Greta Gerwig, for me, Ari Aster, if he's making a horror film, I'll probably be there to see it. I loved Hereditary. I loved where this film went with, I mean, there was obvious comparisons to Wicker Man with the whole festival thing and the pagan-like ritual and all that. But there's obviously more going on at its core, with the Florence Pugh character. I loved her performance. The just sort of grief she exudes in this with, a tragic event that kind of kicks off other stuff that's also going on in her life, and just kind of this lack of support that she feels from people around her, that should be there for her in this time of need, but just kind of selfish, and just her kind of spiral into the arms of something that, you know, feels good. And, you know, there's just a lot going on. It's hard to really encompass this film in like a minute, but I was on board from right, you know, from the get-go, and it features some of my favorite scenes of the year, too, which I'll mention afterwards. But yeah, just solid film. I'm on board for anything Ari Aster does. So number 2, Midsommar.
I agree with you about Ari Aster, even though horror is not my preferred genre. And Midsommar is my number 10 of the year. I really love this movie. Good pick, Hermano.
I wondered where it was going to sit for you, Hermano. It's my number 11. I figured it had to be up there. You're our horror guy, so nice to see it there.
My number 2 is written and directed by S. Craig Zahler, and it is Dragged Across Concrete. Once 2 overzealous cops get suspended from the force, they must delve into the criminal underworld to get their proper compensation. And boy, do they ever. It's a neo-exploitation noir western, and it's done with near perfection. The script is wonderfully efficient, and the character development is very elaborate, which I just love. A deliberate pace for almost 3 hours, and it's just brilliant. This movie is 100% my jam. Everything about this movie, though, has been done before by other combinations of films prior to it. There actually is very little that is original. However, it's how Zahler utilizes those familiar pieces to establish what I think was one of the most deliberately engrossing stories of the year.
You've got 5 seconds to hand me your drawer.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
I really need a package.
Please.
There's a quiet but never boring pace with that efficient and crisp script, as I said. And they're wonderfully played by every single actor that lays out everything. And I do mean everything that we need to know about everybody that comes into play in this movie. I think Zahler, I don't think he ever asks you to empathize with anyone, no matter how dirty or clean the individuals are. All he does is show you how they came to make their decisions and their life circumstances. Now, I know there's been some controversies about the leads of this film and maybe what Zahler is trying to say, but it's not just Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn's film. It's far more reaching than just the 2 white people, and is very understanding of its minority characters. The first half of this really sets up the second half, which is elaborately tense and thrilling in so many ways. So much about the camera work and production design really mirrors, I think, the sparseness of the script. But I think Zahler has really honed in his style from his previous films. So this movie is just absolutely brilliant. Like I said, 100% my jam and my number 2 of the year.
Already seem to address every imaginable subject. One man broke new ground with a seemingly random obsession about exploding helicopters in movies. He was a podcaster on the edge, a maverick broadcaster who played by his own rules. Now, he has a last chance to talk about the strange way helicopters explode in film. Exploding Helicopter, available on iTunes and Podomatic now. Think you know about chopper fireballs? Think again.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Okay, let's just remind everyone of our 5 through 2s. Mark.
My number 5 was Uncut Gems. Number 4, 1917. Number 3, Parasite. And number 2, Little Women.
Wally?
All right, and I have The Perfection, Wild Rose, Uncut Gems, and Parasite.
Hermano?
I have number 5, Marriage Story. Number 4, Honeyland. Number 3, Uncut Gems. And number 2, Midsummer.
All right, my number 5 was The Nightingale. Number 4, Parasite. Number 3, Climax. Number 2, Dragged Across Concrete. With that said, Mark, your number 1 film of the year should not be a surprise to me, I bet.
No, probably not. The trouble with this film is that it is not coming to theaters wide until February. I saw it in October for the Vermont International Film Festival. Parasite was the second night. I think Nonfiction was opening. Parasite was the second night. So that was the first film I saw. And this was the second film that I saw. And this movie, some years there's a film that really is just raised above as your number 1, everything else pretty highly. And I think that is this year. I think this film is going to be a best of the decade contender. It's pure cinematic bliss. And I mean that in totality. It's Portrait of a Lady on Fire from Celine Sciamma. I've seen her earlier film previous to this, really 5 years ago. I mean, again, it's a female director that is not that prolific, and I'm sure it's not her fault. In Girlhood was really great, but this film is just absolutely gobsmacking to me. The art in the filmmaking process, it's about something being complete, done enough, but not, can something be done enough? And this movie is that. I mean, it is absolutely, to me, it's a perfect film. I can't think of anything wrong with it. There are 2 folks haven't seen it. It's about I guess I'll just read the synopsis because again, it's coming in February wide. It's on an isolated island in Brittany at the end of the 18th century. A female painter is obliged to paint a wedding portrait of a young woman. And the cast is very sparse. I think there's really 3 scenes with men at all in it. I think is a wonderful touch. There are 2 music tracks that really come almost as punctuation, and rewatching the first one that is really diegetic music because it's a piece that is sung by the cast on screen. Just absolutely wonderful, and leads to the title scene. I thought of films like Rebecca and The Uninvited from the 1930s and 40s as somewhat of an influence with the setting and just the where this film takes place near that cliff. And as I say, I can't wait for people to see this. It should have been. I don't know why Les Mis is the French nomination, because this is the best international film to me, best film of the year. It's coming to Criterion at some point, I think later in 2020, and of course in theaters in February. So I can't wait to have other people see this film. This film actually got me in trouble with my mother because I brought my daughter and her friend and told her that it had lesbian sex in it. So I praise it for getting me in trouble with my mother. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, my number 1. Go see it.
This just missed my top 5. This is my number 6 movie of the year, Mark. It is beautiful. It's heart-wrenchingly beautiful with in how it depicts the love between these 2 people. It's the most sensual film of the year, I think.
Yeah.
Right. It's just the level of detail throughout. From the script to the production design to the way it looks, the way it's framed, the stories that are being told or the songs that are sung reflect, I think, the fate of their relationship.
Right.
There's a lot of just stunning detail in this movie. So yeah,
the writing's amazing. She wrote it herself too, which it just amazed me.
Great movie, great pick. Wally, you're number one.
All right. Well, so historically, whenever we've done our top 5, there's usually one movie that I'll see, and it usually is like somewhere in like kind of mid-year that usually ends up being my number 1, and it ends up holding on to the number 1 spot for a while until generally later in the year where there'll be like another movie that I'll check out just kind of walking into sight unseen, not know anything about it, and that will generally blow it out of that number 1 spot. Not this year. Because my number 1, I feel like I should announce it by first going, "Hark! Hark! Neptune, strike your dead Winslow!" I love The Lighthouse. And this, I saw this movie and I couldn't stop smiling through it. I enjoyed every single minute of this movie. 2 lighthouse keepers trying to maintain their sanity whilst living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s.
I don't have to say nothing.
Danny! Let Neptune strike ye dead, Winslow! Hark! Hark! Triton! Hark! Bellow! Bid our father, the Sea King, rise from the depths full foul in his fury. Black waves teeming with salt foam, to smother this young mouth with pungent slime. To choke ye, engorging your organs till ye turn blue and bloated with bilge and brine and can scream no more. Only when he, crowned in cockle shells, with slithering tentacled tail and steaming beard, take up his fell befinned arm. His coral-tined trident screeches banshee-like in the tempest and plunges right through your gullet, bursting ye, a bulging bladder no more, but a blasted bloody film now, a nothing for the harpies and the souls of dead sailors to pick and claw and feed upon, only to be lapped up and swallowed by the infinite waters of the dread emperor himself. Forgotten to any man, to any time, forgotten to any god or devil, forgotten even to the sea. For any stuff or part of Winslow, even any scantling of your soul, is Winslow no more, but is now itself the sea.
Directed by Robert Eggers, this is where they used the period film cameras to shoot this movie, and the lenses. I mean, not the lenses, not the cameras, but the period film lenses from the 1890s to shoot this, to give it a very unique look. The composition, the fact that the use of black and white in this, William Dafoe just tearing it up on screen. This movie was just an utter joy for me, and Kate and I will use the sea curse speech as just something to do for fun. It comes in handy in all sorts of social situations. Specifically, grace at Thanksgiving comes in very handy. And just a single location. It's this whole movie is carried by the performances of everybody involved, and it's just awesome. And I absolutely love this movie, from opening frame and the sounds with the foghorns. I can't gush enough about this movie. Makes me want to just go and get some liquor out of the cabinet and dance around the table, and then throw it out the window and break all the chairs. So yeah, my number 1 is The Lighthouse.
It's another one of those big, brash, bold films that has a lot of balls that I like, and this is my number 15 of the year. It's a great pick, Wally. Love it. Hermano, you're number 1.
My number 1 is my second most recent addition to my list. It immediately fell in love with it. I love this director's other films. I think everyone has already mentioned this film, minus maybe Tim. Parasite. Tim, did you mention Parasite?
Yeah, I mentioned it as my number 4.
Oh, I forgot already. Yeah, I loved it. I watched it just last week. Yeah, I was on board, man. Like, I had heard a lot about the film, went in mostly blind. I sort of had an idea of what it was about. And although I feel like I'd seen so many films tackle the exact same sort of subject matter with, the class wealth divide and just kind of like Tim had mentioned, kind of the whole idea of like, oh, eat the rich. Joker was sort of about that. I'm sure there were so many others that I had seen as well recently. I felt like that's like the hot thing that a lot of films want to tackle, and I felt like no other film did it as well as Parasite. Like, just exploring the idea of these two families, just how far apart they are in their society, just kind of illustrating like how they view one another. Obviously it does come down a bit harder on the rich family with how they look very much down on the what they don't know is like the really poor family. They just look at it as like almost like they're middle class or something, but even then they're still looking down on them like from like atop their mountaintop. And I just loved it, man. Just like little very layered film, like Tim mentioned, so many things that I feel like I probably missed and would love to see on a rewatch. I pretty much wanted to watch it immediately again after I was done watching it, because I kept seeing how he would illustrate how just simple things like, the family at one point, the rich family goes on a camping trip and they're just kind of rained out and they could just come back home to their luxury and stuff. And like, there's that same rainstorm basically rains the other family out of their home, and they're completely devastated by a simple thing like that. And just like other little touches, like the daughter mistakenly eating dog food, thinking it's like some rich bacon treat or something, and she's like, fuck, I'm eating dog food. Like, I don't know, I felt like the film is just like it weaves in and out of genres too. Like, it was like a horror film at one point towards the end. It's like dealing with obvious drama, black comedy, like suspense. Like it just goes through all these things so well. Like, and I absolutely like where Wally was kind of not on board 100% with the end. I thought they absolutely nailed the ending, and I felt like it really illustrates just like the fucking crushing burden it is sometimes to kind of dig yourself out of a situation, and where some people just will never understand what it's like because they're looking at it from like a place of privilege. So yeah, I was floored by this film, man. I was a huge fan of Memories of Murder. I loved Mother, and another film on his filmography that I loved.
Excellent pick. My number 1 film is something that I saw earlier on in the year, and I rewatched. Actually, I rewatched in December 31st. It was my literally the last film I watched in 2019, and it's a documentary, and it is Apollo 11. I knew after my first watch that it was going to be very difficult for anything to top this movie, because it really is fucking incredible. It's told completely through archival footage, and no matter that you already know how it turns out, it's about as thrilling as any of the narrative features you'll ever see. I do not recommend watching this if you have anxiety over sense of self and purpose in life, because this can easily give you an existential panic attack regarding your own insignificance in the grand scheme of things because of the sense of scale this movie offers. The use of diagrams showing the steps of the journey is really well done. It helps the viewer who has little knowledge of how much is involved in this process. The score is a standout. It really adds to every scene. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. I had never seen the actual moon landing in its entirety, and there's a 3+ minute unbroken shot of the moon landing, and it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Just the way it's able to depict scale from the very opening shot, and that's what this movie is about. It's about scale, the scale of humans versus rockets, rocket versus Earth, shuttle versus moon, man versus that vastness of space. it really is not an easy task to present the greatest accomplishment in human history, but somehow Todd Miller and his crew were able just to fine tune this experience that conveys that sheer impossibility of this mission. That was performed with near perfection by thousands of people. That does such a great job of showing you the sheer amount of people involved in this. So yeah, it's a phenomenal film that it did a lot for me, and I'm sad. Talk about snubs, Christ Almighty! Why even bother with the Oscars now? You know, this year has been just a masterclass in fuckery with the Oscars. I'll tell you that. But yeah, Apollo 11, my number one. Hermano, did you ever have a chance to catch up with this?
No, I didn't. I was going to bring it up as one of the films I missed.
Oh, boo. Mark, you saw this, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's my just outside, probably by number 22.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Should be higher.
So that's our top fives. And guys, I was a little worried. That Uncut Gems was going to be forced in there as the first time watchers film of the year. But it looks like it's Parasite, because that's the only one that.
It looks like it's Parasite. I was hoping for Lighthouse. I really was. I was like, I hope they all saw Lighthouse and all loved it as much as I did.
Well, that follows up last year, which was You Were Never Really Here. That was the first time watchers film of the year. But Parasite is, has been the consensus in a lot of places you look, when it comes to best film of the year. And I think it's worthy for a first time.
I think it's absolutely worthy too. I mean, it was my number 2.
Yep.
So I mean, it's high up on that list for me. Obviously, I think it's a solid contender.
Excellent. Hermano, do you want to mention any of those movies you missed, or performances, or scenes, or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't watch nearly as many films as you guys do, so I missed a lot. So I'll just run down them real quick. Knives Out, The Farewell, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Jojo Rabbit, Ad Astra, Last Black Man in San Francisco I didn't get to see, Monos, Waves, 1917, A Hidden Life, and Apollo 11. Those are all ones that I wanted to see, but just, I'm sure I'm missing some other stuff there, but the ones at the top of my head that I really wanted to see, just couldn't find time. You guys already went through scenes and performances?
Yes.
So scenes, I'll just run them off real quick. The cliff scene in Midsommar, as well as one featuring Florence Pugh towards the end of the film. Won't spoil it. The lighthouse. There's a scene that plays in slow motion that I want to like freeze frame it and just like hang it on my wall, which is a scene with Willem Dafoe and a light.
Oh, is he naked?
Yes. Willem Dafoe naked on my wall. That's what I want. The Marriage Story fight scene I thought was really well done. The entire finale of Uncut Gems I thought was phenomenal. And the Brad Pitt arriving at the ranch in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
It's so
I thought
good.
was amazing.
I just rewatched that movie, and that scene plays out so wonderful. It's like a horror film right there.
It's pretty tense. Like, if not for Uncut Gems, that would have been my most tense scene of the year. And as far as performances, just probably stuff you guys probably mentioned as well. Joaquin Phoenix, obviously, in Joker, Willem Dafoe in Lighthouse, Florence Pugh in Midsommar, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story, and Adam Driver in Marriage Story.
Mark, any honorable mentions you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could just give my top. I mean, my 10 through 6 was, my number 10 was The Lighthouse. Again, should be higher, probably. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The Nightingale is number 8. The Irishman didn't get any mentions yet. Number 7. Marriage Story is number 6. And then if I was going to say just outside my 20 would be Three Faces, Jafar Panahi, Transit, and Apollo 11, and A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. And 20 through 11 would be Gloria Bell, The Wild Pear Tree. That's the Nuri Bilge Ceylan movie that just, again, haven't heard a lot about, but I really enjoyed. It's long. Yeah. Waves, 18. The Farewell, 17. Us, 16. Knives Out, 15. Last Black Man in San Francisco, 14. Her Smell, 13. A High Life, 12, that I paired with Anaria, again, because of that, the end. And Midsommar, again, it feels like it should be higher along with The Lighthouse, but I currently have it at number 11.
What about you, Wally?
I got a couple. I usually put documentaries in my honorable mention category because I'm never quite sure how to really approach them as far as my top 5 of the year, because they are fact based and they will give you a narrative of what they're talking about, but I don't consider them movies.
Boo.
You know, I mean, to me they're in a separate thing all by itself.
Like you,
And
you're in a separate thing all by yourself, Wally. Go ahead.
Yes, and people love me for it.
Mm.
Apollo 11, which I thought was just mind blowing. I believe I saw that with you, Timmy.
Nope, that's not true.
I did not. I saw it with Kate then. But the spectacle of Apollo 11 is just something to behold. A documentary I came across just by accident on Netflix called Iron Fist and Kung Fu Kicks, which is the history of Hong Kong martial arts films in cinema and its influence on society, which was really interesting. I mean, they start from like the early 60s when the Shaw brothers like started their empire, and believe it or not, they finish in Uganda.
Oh.
Like the guy who plays the doctor from Bad Black talks about like his experience like being in Uganda, working with the director there to make a martial arts film involving children. And then a movie that stuck with me because it's just so utterly bizarre. And the director, the fact that it's Jim Jarmusch that made this, it even makes it even more bizarre. And that's The Dead Don't Die.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of you guys catch this at all?
Yeah, I liked it more than most people did, I think.
I dug it, but it's just one of those, like, I never know, like, this movie kept me off balance because I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? It's a weird black comedy, I guess the best way to put it. But the comedy parts they had me laughing out loud, like some of the stuff that they're doing. Like the visual joke of like Adam Driver's car is hilarious. His reaction in the diner when he sees the dead body just goes, yuck, and just leaves. Like,
yeah.
It's some of the stuff that people constantly repeating the same line over and over again throughout the movie when it comes to questioning what the hell is going on. And then you've got this bizarre ass ending involving Tilda Swinton.
She's great. Yeah.
That the performances in this are hilarious, and the movie's just so weird, but it's just not good enough to break my top 5. But it's worth bringing up.
So my number 20 was Uncut Gems, then Pain and Glory at 19, Little Woman at 18, The Irishman at 17, Birds of Passage, a film from South America, Latin America. Oh boy, I feel bad for not knowing where it's from. But that was number 16. The Lighthouse at number 15. Us at 14. The Art of Self-Defense at number 13. Everybody Knows, the Asghar Farhadi film at number 12. 1917 at 11. Midsommar at 10. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a movie that went up on rewatch for me. It was in the teens somewhere and went up to number 9. Marriage Story at 8. The Farewell at 7. And Portrait of a Lady on Fire at number 6. So I guess that's it, guys. That's it. We good?
Wow.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Year's done.
Here's to 2020.
I'm working on 2020.
Yeah.
I think we should compile my list of anticipated movies because I've given up watching trailers. So I really have, and it makes it hard for me to just kind of predict what I'm going to want to see. So I try to have to go through the release list and kind of go one by one and kind of look at the short synopsis to see if it looks like something I might be interested in.
I totally skipped over Hermano. I'm sorry, Hermano. What is your honorable mentions?
It's okay. I'm forgettable. My number 10 is I'm probably the only person that's going to have this in their top 10. And Tim will know why. El Camino.
Nice.
There you go.
I loved it, but it has the benefit of 5 seasons of a series I love. The Nightingale.
El Camino was my number 39, by the way.
Yeah, I loved it, man. Skinny Pete forever.
Absolutely.
The Nightingale, tough watch, but well made.
Mm-hmm.
Us, I recently caught up with.
Nice.
I really want to rewatch it because I feel like I missed something. Thought I could have been higher on the list. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and the Honeyland knocked out this film, but it would have been in my top 5 if not for watching Honeyland, and that's The Lighthouse.
Nice.
Also a huge fan. Really want to rewatch it, but I mean, no brainer considering we're all from kind of the New England area. It just felt like, a type of film that I had seen, sort of told straight, and then watching it told this way was like just kind of phenomenal and crazy. So yeah, I was a huge fan of The Lighthouse as well. I'll probably regret it not being my number one a year from now.
Okay, that does it for this episode of the First Time Watchers podcast. Donate via patreon.com/firsttimewatchers or buy stuff at zazzle.com/firsttimewatchers.
Talk to us on Twitter at 1STTimeWatchers on Twitter.
Or write to us at our email, firsttimewatchers@gmail.com.
And download our episodes on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher. Feel free to leave a review. We love feedback. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, this is my favorite show of the year. Always great to join you guys. I think I've been doing this for like 3 or 4 years. So thank you so much for having me on. It's great to have an excuse to watch 2019 movies and then talk with you guys.
Indeed. You'll be back with us at some point closer to the summer, I'm sure. I'm not sure what we'll be talking about, but hopefully it'll be good.
Absolutely.
Maybe it'll be a Gerard Butler movie. I don't know. Who knows?
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Can we do Cats? Can we do Cats 3 times?
Oh, I would love to talk about Cats again. Oh, you know what? I didn't even talk about my worst films of the year. My worst films of the year, by the way, I have 7 worst films of the year. I'll go from 7 to 1. Bombshell, Joker, Stuber, Child's Play, Rambo: Last Blood, Dark Phoenix, and then now look, I do have Cats as my worst film of the year, but it's really in a league of its own. Is it really the worst? It could also be the best thing I saw in 2019. It really is the gift of Cats.
Tim's like bottom 7 just sounds like he just doesn't listen or pay attention to shit. Stuber. You needed to go see Stuber to go see it was going to be a bad movie? Really?
No.
I can tell that by the freaking trailer that I saw.
Yeah, I'm an eco-wise completionist, so I was obligated to see Stuber.
Fair enough. I didn't know he was in it for some reason. I completely blanked on that.
Anyways, yeah, let's talk about Cats when you're back with us, Mark. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. It's at Mark Hurney, at Mark Hurne is the last name. Letterboxd the same. I haven't been updating much, but send me a message. Let me know what you thought. Excellent.
And stay tuned for our next episode. We'll be crossing off a list of shame for Wally by discussing the 1998 Robert De Niro film Ronin.
Woo! That's the First Time Watchers podcast because we like to watch.
Somebody need me too much. Somebody know me too well. Somebody pull me up short and put me through hell and give me support for being alive. Make me alive. Make me alive. Make me confused. Mock me with praise. Let me be used. Vary my days. But alone is alone. Not alive. Somebody crowd me with love. Somebody force me to care. Somebody make me come through. I'll always be there, as frightened as you, to help us survive. Being alive. Being alive. Being alive.
Mr. Tim Costa.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mr. Tim. Hey, I see you.
Yes,
You have video on.
I got a Wi-Fi extender, and I'm confident.
You just went dead. Oh, okay.
I got a Wi-Fi extender.
You're confident?
I'm confident in the extension, in the connection. Although,
I've heard you're confident in your extension.
Hey, now.
You should be.
Hey, now.
I heard. I even heard from the boys that you needed an extension. So,
no.
I'm just kidding.
If you want to.
Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
There he is.
Look at that big fat mic right in your face. Oh, nice.
We were just talking about that. Tim said he got an extension. So, you know.
Tim doesn't need an extension. I used to trip
Oh,
over his
really?
shit. I used to trip over his shit at our old job, walking to the bathroom. You know, like when you go to a concert and they have those cable runners on the floor and they have like the plastic ramps you got to walk over. Tim needs those, but like larger.
Just to go to the bathroom or just to sit?
Just to keep his junk like out of the way.
Right.
It's like a mini golf ramp. Is what essentially that's what Tim needs. Tim needs a mini golf ramp.
Right.